Hey everybody, welcome to Our Favorite Frontier, the Star Trek podcast that is made by us. I was going to say it's the only one on the internet, but that's certainly not true. But it's the only one on the internet that is hosted by us. Who are your hosts, that is? Well, I'm Alex.
And I'm Nick.
And we're going to be going through every episode of Star Trek The Next Generation. And this is our first real episode. We're discussing Encounter at Farpoint, episodes 1 and 2.
Captain's log, stardate 41153.7. Our destination is planet Deneb 4, beyond which lies the great unexplored mass of the galaxy.
Nick, what did you think of Encounter at Farpoint?
Ugh.
That's right, it's ugh.
It was definitely an interesting take on the entire universe.
Sure. What? All right, so give me your breakdown. What'd you think of it?
I thought obviously it's 2 episodes put into one, which makes it on Netflix a hour and a half special, as it was, I believe, a 2-hour runtime when it originally aired, making it probably the most boring movie I ever watched. That's what it felt like to me. It seemed like there was a lot of we didn't get introduced. We kind of got thrown into something, and it never really paid off at the end.
Yeah, for an hour and a half runtime, it's shocking how few things actually happen in this episode.
It drags everything out.
Yeah. This is an incredibly Gene Roddenberry episode, in that lots and lots of episodes of the original series, as well as Star Trek The Motion Picture, we're flying through space and we find a thing, and the thing is all powerful, and it causes us to look in at ourselves. In this case, Q is the all-powerful thing that they just happen upon in space, and he puts humans on trial for all of humanity's crimes, which in my opinion is probably the most on-the-nose version of this story that we've seen in Star Trek. It's not really clever in any way. It just sort of says, humanity's bad, but can humanity do better? There's no metaphor, there's no subtext. It's just very, very on the nose. Is humanity good or not?
And his trial that he gave them at Farpoint honestly does nothing for me as did humanity redeem itself.
Right.
Whatever they did at the end, which we'll get there, how the overall story ends, to me does not prove whether or not humanity is saved or redeemed.
Yeah. It's a very what goes on at Farpoint, in my opinion, is a cheap. I mean, it wants to be a Richard Matheson story. Richard Matheson wrote a lot of Twilight Zone. He wrote a lot of original series. He wrote I Am Legend, which is one of my favorite books. He's sort of the master of the old school plot twist. I think he even wrote the first Planet of the Apes movie. But yeah, and this was sort of an attempt to do that where, this is a spoiler podcast. The show's been out since 1986, 80, whatever, since the mid-'80s. So we could say, the station is an alien. Oh, no. That was the plot twist. And it's not that it's a predictable plot twist. It's just that it's kind of dumb. Having those 2 squid aliens sort of hold hands in space. And yeah, it wasn't really, I agree, it wasn't, that's not a test of whether or not humanity has overcome violence. They should have put the humans in a violent scenario and see if they got out of it non-violently.
Exactly. I felt that was just very strange. I kind of figured that I was I wouldn't say taken away by what ended up being the weird jellyfish thing. The alien, that is.
Yeah.
But when LeVar Burton was like, I've never seen materials like this before, I'm like, oh, they're probably inside a living creature. And honestly, it was just the saddest ending I could have possibly imagined. It was just borderline pathetic.
Yeah. This is obviously, like you said, we're just sort of thrown into this story. The crew is sort of coming together haphazardly. Some people have worked under Picard, some people have not. Everyone sort of has these past relationships. So let's dissect these characters here. Picard, what do you think? Despite the fact that we all know Patrick Stewart is a delightful human being, what was your takeaway from the character?
Now, as our audience should know from the previous episode 000, that I have never seen Star Trek: The Next Generation. I have very limited Star Trek knowledge, so I didn't know how to go into this. I did take notes on my phone while watching the episodes. The first note being, in regards to your question, Patrick Stewart has the tightest jumpsuit in all the galaxy.
That's I actually do want to mention their costumes, which is a weird thing for me to want to immediately jump through. But Gene Roddenberry, like I said, this is a very Gene Roddenberry episode, and this is Gene Roddenberry's show. Gene Roddenberry has this weird obsession with onesies. Like,
yeah, that was I wasn't sure if he was wearing pants or that was a onesie, and that was
Gene Roddenberry has this fascination where I guess in the future people they try to keep the number of articles of clothing down to a minimum. Because, I mean, in this, they're wearing onesies, so they're just wearing one article to the shirt and pants. And this is a production note, side note, but in Star Trek: The Motion Picture, Gene Roddenberry spent an absurd amount of money on the budget on the costumes because he wanted the boots to be part of the costume too. Like, I think Gene Roddenberry just loves footy pajamas.
Maybe he had a fantastic collection.
Or maybe his dad never let him have it when he was a kid. And he always wanted footy
So he
pajamas.
wants everyone to have them.
Yeah, that's his ideal future. But yeah.
So Picard as a character, he seemed to be, at least in this episode, he seemed to be pretty self-aware of everything. He didn't seem to have much struggle when he had things to go through. He obviously is the leader, and he stood up for them, during the trial. But he doesn't seem to have many flaws at what seems to be the beginning of the show, which I'm hoping there will be character development. As you said, the show does get better.
Yes, much better. Okay, so let's move in the crew. What are your thoughts on Riker?
Now, after Picard, I kind of lost track who was who.
Okay, Riker, he was the guy that was already on the planet. And he's the one that sort of noticed, the apples just appeared when I wanted apples.
Yes.
That
guy.
Played by Jonathan Frakes is the actor's name.
I thought he was all right. I thought he kind of put a more wholesome spin to things. Obviously he was aware of the galaxy and stuff. Obviously he's going on as, second in command, I'm assuming. Mm-hmm. So I think he just seemed like a regular character on the show. Like he has his wits about him. He is handsome. He is intelligent, and he'll be a good asset to the crew. Obviously, not seeing these things as of yet.
Sure. I'm not going to go through every character, but there's a couple I want to hit because things just struck me as interesting. Now, Data, the robot android guy. What was your thoughts on him?
Okay, this is my thought on him in my notes. Android can memorize everything he's told, but can't whistle Pop Goes the Weasel because he can't remember how it goes. Or he can't whistle.
I assume it was that he can't actually whistle. Not as much he can't remember the notes.
Because I feel like when he was whistling, it seemed like he wasn't getting it right, not the fact that he couldn't whistle. Sure. I think he is a good parallel to Spock, which I'm assuming is why he is a character.
He is and he isn't. And I want to save my Data Spock discussion for a future episode, but it's interesting that you say that as someone who knows Data very well and knows Spock very well. So, sorry, continue.
It's not much beyond that. I mean, I obviously am not giving full descriptions of these characters since I really don't feel like I got to know any of them.
Sure.
So Data is pretty much the Spock of this show. Mm-hmm. And he is all-knowing. He understands humanity but cannot experience it. So kind of like Spock in a way, as he is a Vulcan who can't, experience it. I thought it was funny that McCoy did say something like, "What are you, a Vulcan?" to Data when they were having their conversation.
Yeah.
As bizarre that entire thing was.
The one side note about Bones, that cameo, it's weird how Bones gets more Southern as he gets older. Because I know I've been thinking back into the original series, he never really had a Southern accent. You
And
know,
also, I didn't
he
find
mentioned a couple times. I think he's from Georgia, the character. I think he likes iced tea or sweet tea or whatever. But he'd always just say, he spoke fairly normally. And it's weird hearing him say, "Boy, I don't see no Vulcaneers on you." Like he got more
I
Southern.
found him to be out of character. I felt like he was very rude. And
Yeah,
not
and
really the McCoy. I know McCoy, from what I've gathered, he kind of is a
He's-
smartass sometimes,
he's
but
blunt. He's very blunt.
this one just seemed rude and not blunt. It was a complete difference.
Yeah.
I feel like he didn't convey his character properly, but I don't know if that's the script or the way he decided to take the approach as the character got older.
I think it was I blame the writing, less the actor.
Yeah, because he definitely was. It was honestly, to me, it was not even McCoy.
And so the one other character, I guess it's two characters, I'm going to lump them into one. What were your thoughts on, because you sent me an interesting text while watching it. What was your thought on the Crushers, Beverly and Wesley?
Beverly and Wesley. So that's the kid.
Yes, and his
That's
mother.
the Will Wheaton kid.
It's the Will Wheaton, yes.
So I don't know what's going on. Obviously, I don't know anything about what's going to happen in the future, but they're setting it up like that's Picard's kid, I feel. Because the way they met eyes when she came into the thing, and then she's like, "Oh, this is my..." He's like, "Oh." And, like, they didn't really say it was her, like... She never mentioned who the father is. But Picard did bring the father's body, but did he bring someone else's body and they're covering it up? Or I really don't know what's going on. But he took a real fascination to the kid, to the point where I think that's his kid.
All right. So I'm gonna go ahead and tell you right now that's not true.
That's a disappointment, because they really could have worked on that.
But you watched this episode slightly before me. I was on about a half-hour delay from you, and I watched that scene through the lens that you just set up, and I agree it was a very strange intro. Obviously, Picard and Beverly know each other, but the way Wesley's introduced is sort of obnoxious.
It's like it's his kid.
And this is all rumor. I don't know that this has ever been actually confirmed, but I guess that's because Gene Roddenberry sort of wrote Wesley as the surrogate for himself. Like Gene Roddenberry said, "Here's who I would be in this universe."
Okay.
So Wesley is sort of an ideal, like almost like a perfect person. And like I said, his introduction is very obnoxious. The word obnoxious will be used to describe him almost all the time for the rest of the show. Luckily, he's not in all of the show. I think they boot him out, early season 3. Just like, this kid sucks.
So, I mean, why does Picard have such a feel for this kid if it's not his own? Does he just feel bad for this kid and the mother? Because there are no kids allowed on the, out where he is in the command station, but he let the kid sit down in his chair anyway.
Yeah, and I guess the assumption just must be because he knew, the last time he saw Wesley was a baby, I guess. But it's weird because they set up earlier that, Picard says directly to Riker, "I'm not good with kids. I don't like kids." So it's weird that he acts so fatherly towards Wesley.
Which makes me think, and I'm going to ignore you because I think he's really the father.
Okay, you are free to ignore me.
I can be so disappointed when I finish the show. Like, he's not the dad. You could be like, "I told you that in the first
I told you
episode."
that first episode. You didn't believe me. So, one fun thing about Encounter at Farpoint is that it is the first reference to, but we do not see a Ferengi. And there's a threat made to the Grand Groppler, Doppler, whatever his name is, that said, if you're not willing to do business with Starfleet, perhaps you'd be willing to engage in a business transaction with the Ferengi. And he follows that threat up with, or he follows that statement up with a veiled threat, which is hopefully, I hear the Ferengi found their last business partners to be quite tasty. So, armed with that knowledge, Nick, tell me what you think the Ferengi are going to be.
Okay, I feel like now with that question, you're setting me up to think that they are going to be like something awful, but maybe something really wimpy. The Ferengi obviously are some sort of creature that eats man. I can't say they're necessarily carnivorous because I don't know if they're human. Not carnivorous, I apologize. Cannibalistic. Obviously carnivorous if they're eating human.
Yes.
Sorry, I screwed that up. So I imagine a Ferengi kind of looking like a Klingon and Bigfoot put together. That's what I'm imagining.
Okay.
And clearly this is upsetting to this gentleman, and obviously foreshadowing to finally seeing the Ferengi will be something we experience later. So that's what I'm going with, and I'm sure I'm going to be completely wrong.
Okay. I was just curious what you thought. What episode do the Ferengi first show up in?
You're just going to play this back to me when I get there to the Ferengi episode, and I'm going to be like, I can't believe I said that.
Captain, the Ferengi would be very interested in a base like this.
Fine. Let's hope they find you as tasty as they did their past associates.
On the whole now, just one last thing about the characters. Are they likable? Do you like any of them?
I don't know them. I can't like them.
Okay.
That's honestly how I feel about that. I think the short blonde-haired girl, I feel like I could like her as a character. I feel like I could like Picard as a character. I think I could like that Marissa Tomei-looking chick as a character. I feel like I could like them, but I didn't get to really even know who they are. They're just, honestly, they put characters in, and then they just let Patrick Stewart run the whole show. That's how I felt that.
One of the things that I think we'll do on this podcast is once we finish TNG, I want to go back and revisit this episode, because looking through this episode of knowing who these characters are, this whole episode was very, very strangely regimented in a way. It was very, very, I don't want to say militaristic, but just the way Commander Riker snapped at LaForge when they were on in like that little marketplace. LaForge walks up to Riker and says, "Sir, hey, something's going on." And Riker goes, "Is this an official report?" And LaForge goes, "Yes, it is." "Then address me so." And then LaForge has to stand at attention and go, "Sir, we have word that blah, blah, blah." That was very strange. Just the way they changed shifts was very like someone was sitting in a chair and his replacement came and like tagged him out. Everything felt very, very weirdly militaristic almost, in a way that I found to be off-putting. It made me retroactively like Riker less. Like, Riker, what are you doing? Just yelling at this guy for? He's coming up and giving you good information.
As I said, I feel like this show, at least in this episode, took itself too seriously.
Mm-hmm.
And when it did try to do humor, it was painful. For example, careful, that next rock's loose, and then the kid falls. It was just not even funny. It was just painful.
Yep.
Everything just felt so disenchanting.
Yeah, it's a very awkward episode, and I think I texted you beforehand saying it's a miracle that this show got a season order, let alone made it for 7 seasons. It became one of the great formative sci-fi TV shows of all time.
Now, when this show came out in the 80s,
yeah,
how popular was Star Trek? Were people watching the older episodes on VHS tapes, or they were watching the movies? Like, what made them say Star Trek is coming back and this show is going to help that surge?
Well, Star Trek, the original series, VHS tapes, I don't think they released whole series on VHS tapes. I think this was just when movies were starting to come out on VHS tapes. I didn't think you can buy, whole box sets then. But basically what happened was Star Trek got canceled, lived on in reruns. Star Wars came out. Everyone cared about space again. I think the first 4 Star Trek movies had aired. Motion picture Wrath of Khan, Search for Spock, and The Voyage Home had just aired. If I said aired, what I meant was released in theaters. And Paramount basically said, all right, we're going to start making the show and we'll air it in syndication. Like, this was not like NBC's show. Like, it was aired in syndication. So it was made by Paramount for whoever, wanted to air it and would buy it. So that's sort of how this came. Star Trek was very much in the public, in sort of the public consciousness. And from what I understand, obviously I was not born yet, but a lot of people sort of struggled with it because it was so different. You had an old guy on the bridge. Everyone's wearing pajamas. There's a Klingon on the bridge. Klingons were still bad guys at this point. It was very jarring.
Was this show made in the surge of the Star Trek popularity with the movies?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay, so that is why I believe the show was picked up. Otherwise, it would have been like, what the hell are you doing? If it wasn't Star Trek, I can't imagine it really going anywhere. But with the popularity, it makes sense that they're like, we're going to see this out.
And fun fact, so did a lot of the cast. I know Patrick Stewart, when he was filming the first season, didn't even unpack his suitcase because he didn't expect the show to last.
Really?
And there's another character who really didn't expect the show to last. But we'll get to that character later. So yeah, it's a clunky episode. I don't think it does, I guess, have a message. That humanity can solve problems and be good and do good things, and sort of that classic Star Trek optimism. But it doesn't do it in a particularly smart or clever way. Everything's very on the nose. The whole putting humanity on trial is kind of, whatever. It's not particularly creative.
I thought the dialogue between Q and Picard sometimes was very bad. I think it was very poorly written.
Okay.
And I feel like in their exchanges they repeated themselves a lot. For example, they kept saying,
an hour and a half.
Yeah. For example, every time Q would change a costume or an outfit of different eras of humanity, Picard would be like, well, in costumes like that, and it wouldn't happen. I was like, that's not even a phrase, costumes like that.
Yeah.
And every time he said it, I just laughed to myself. Also, the lighting in the trial at one point was super bad.
Oh, that spotlight looks like it came straight off a studio truck.
And like half of Picard's head is just like completely darkened.
Yeah, I think they were trying to recreate sort of that dramatic William Shatner lighting on his eyes. The problem is what would pass as corny and fun in the 60s just looks stupid now. So that sort of faux dramatic lighting didn't really work.
It was bad. And I was honestly like, who is running this ship right now? In a figurative sense.
Yeah, I mean, the whole episode looked very cheap. Worf's makeup, the Klingon ridged forehead, looked it didn't even match his skin tone. Yeah, it was eh.
Yeah.
The episode was eh.
Definitely, if you weren't convincing me to watch more, I wouldn't watch more.
Yeah, I believe you. The only reason I made it through this, my initial binge watch of Star Trek was because I had seen episodes in high school, and I was like, I thought it was better than this, and I forced myself through, and eventually I was rewarded with good Star Trek later on. But yeah, it's quite a thing. So I guess that wraps up our discussion on Encounter at Farpoint parts 1 and 2. Next week we're going to be going into The Naked Now, which is a pseudo sequel to the Naked Time of the original series, and we'll have lots to say about that episode.
All right,
but that's all we got for now. So if you've enjoyed, like, comment, subscribe, rate. I don't know where we're putting this podcast, so we don't know what's
Hey,
applicable to you.
show your mom this. Maybe she'll be interested. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe if your mom watched Star Trek, she'll be like, oh, those two boys on the internet, they're watching Star Trek. I don't know what moms are like.
I don't know moms watch Star Trek.
I know I have a friend who has a mom, and she likes Star Trek.
Well, that's fun.
So I'm sure there are Star Trek moms out there.
All right.
So anyway, we're signing off this week. Engaged. So be it. Make it so. Whatever. Who knows? All right. Bye, everyone.
Take care.
Our Favorite Frontier is hosted by Alex Russo and Nick Caladona, edited by Alex Russo, and produced by Nerdy Inc. Be sure to follow us on YouTube to catch all of our videos, as well as like us on Facebook, Twitter, and whatever other social media we have.